practicum on charitable giving during COVID-19. It's brought to you by the USA 500 Clubs, LLC. I'm Jonathan Gassman, moderator for today's presentation. For those of you that do not know me, I think most of you do, I'm the CEO of the third generation firm our family started called the Gassman Financial Group in New York City. By background, I'm a CPA, I'm a CFP, a chartered advisor in philanthropy, and primarily we work with executives and their families in creating, advising, and managing their wealth, which includes the area of charitable planning. It tends to be a major focus. We're fortunate to have with us two industry leaders, Ashley Paris. She too is a certified financial planner. She is a senior manager and vice president at JDJ Family Office Services, which is headquartered in good old Boston, Massachusetts. It's Boston, not Boston. Ashley and her team provide customized financial and concierge services to their clients, which includes a host of specialized services, things like bill pay, consolidated reporting, tax coordination, among other professionals, balance sheet administration, trust and estate work, and a lot more. Bottom line is Ashley and her team are considered kind of like an outsourced CFO for their clients, and charitable planning, again, is a big part of what they advise on. And lastly, we're blessed to have Richard Peck, also a member of the USA 500 Club. He's the Vice President for Development and Philanthropic Services at the New Hampshire Community Foundation. He too holds several degrees, included Chartered Financial Consultant, Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy, and he too is a CFP, like Ashley and I. As the Chief Development Officer and a member of the senior leadership team at the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, he oversees the development and implementation of donor acquisition strategy. Richard and his team also work directly with many high net worth clients on supporting their philanthropic needs, as well as leading efforts to enhance external partnerships with other allied professionals. Today, we're going to talk about charitable planning during COVID-19, how professionals engage their clients on charitable giving during this period of time. We'll share some of the current trends and tips, tricks, and tools and resources and talking points. And lastly, as part of the presentation, we'll talk about how you broach the topic of charitable giving and where the entry points are in the conversations with clients and prospects. So with that said, let's open it up with our esteemed group of panelists and talk about it. Why talk about charitable planning today?
Would you like me to go first, JG?
Yeah.
Sure. So why talk about charitable planning? I'll say we're part of the good news story in a lot of not so good news during these past 3 months. And talking about charitable planning, as Pollyanna-ish as this sounds, gives people hope. And it's something they can do positively when there's so much around them that they have no control over. So that's been my experience. People have reached out to us to talk about things. And it's been a very gratifying conversation. The referrals that we get from professionals, it feels like it's fulfilling a need by these individuals who want to talk about it. And then to layer onto that, there's been some changes in the tax law, which JG will allude to a little bit later. And so just making it so that it's part of a conversation that is sometimes can veer away from the idea of making an impact because we're talking about all these other things that are very important these days, but at the same time, making room for a conversation that might seem like it's not timely when in fact there's so many nonprofits that need help now, so many nonprofits that are actually in danger of going out of business, yeah, and needing immediate support as well as some long-term support.
Yeah. Ashley, with the clients that you're working with, what do you see is evolving in real time right now with charitable giving?
Sure. A lot of our clients are starting to think of philanthropy more, especially in the midst of the pandemic. Yeah. They're concerned about the charities and the causes they support on a regular basis and how they can help them. in this time of need. I've seen a few who are accelerating some long-term pledges that they have, making additional donations to COVID-related funds. And, we have a foundation client who typically makes about 200 grants at year end, and they're moving up their schedule to really support these charities now when they really need it the most. So it's been busy, to say the least.
Yeah, and there's no doubt the tax law, we recently had enacted the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, which really catapults charitable planning right onto the front stage for us, and enhances the ability to make gifts. Any thoughts or comments on the CARES Act from your perspectives?
I would say that it's not the primary reason why people move forward in their charitable giving. It's nice to have these things in the background. And we've seen a lot of situations where the tax laws support what someone wants to do, but it's not necessarily the driver. And that's always an important thing to keep in mind. It's like we'll do today, we'll talk about these changes, but we also know that there are a lot of factors in why people make their charitable decisions.
Yeah.
From my perspective, with the CARES Act being so prominently displayed in the news, our clients are really starting to pay attention and wondering how the changes impact their charitable plans. We had a client who recently wanted to make a big donation to a COVID-related fund, so we helped her with some analysis on how she can make the biggest impact, whether it be by cash or appreciated securities or even from her private foundation. But really the changes in the AGI limitations is what prompted the conversation from her and got her thinking.
Yeah, it's such a great point you mentioned, Ashley. The new, I guess the changes, first of all, with the Trump enactment of his tax law, probably close to 9 out of 10 people aren't itemizing anymore. So they're not availing themselves of charitable donations. And now the cap being lifted, as you alluded to, on the charitable donations from, 60% to now 100%. Is just amazing. Any other thoughts and ideas of things that are occurring because of the CARES Act with charitable giving, from what you could see?
I'll jump down to the bottom bullet there.
Yeah.
Even though people were allowed to push the required minimum distributions from 70.5 to 72, the qualified charitable distribution that people are allowed to take money from their IRA and roll it over up to $100,000 to their favorite charity or charities at age 70.5 is still valid. And it's still something I think we should be talking about, because people will still want to take money that's in a tax deferred position and move it to their favorite nonprofit and never have to pay taxes on that. So even though there is a change to one and not the other, it's still, I think, important to talk about those two with clients to make sure that they understand.
Yeah, and your point is well taken, Richard, because we've seen it with many of our clients that have decided to postpone taking the distributions this year because, the markets have collapsed. They're down in value. People are not inclined, if they don't need it, to take it. But there's incentive to actually make the qualified charitable donations and distributions, because if we think tax rates are going to go up in the future, which I would probably venture to guess everybody's going to say, yeah, we agree, give it away today. Give it with a warm hand rather than a cold hand when you're gone. So there's incentive today to give. And this is where I think we, Ashley, Rick, myself, can really help people figure out the best possible planning ideas and strategies for our clients. And it's a great entry point, again, as you pointed out in our conversation the other day. Talk about QCDs and RMDs. It's a great time to talk about charitable giving with everything going on. And as you look across the country with COVID running rampant, I mean, I'm in the state of Florida right now, one of the highest the numbers are through the roof. Tell us a little bit about some of these response funds that are going on nationally, Richard.
So this is pulled from a Fidelity site. So I have to say, sometimes it's viewed that community foundations and commercial donor advised funds are in competition with each other, which can be true. But to Fidelity's credit, they are deferring a lot of conversations, especially on the local level, to community foundations or to, as you can see here, to all different parts of the country. There's almost 600 COVID-19 response funds. And if you go to their site, you can zoom in and find the specific community foundation or whatever it is that's being represented in detail, so somebody can make a donation there. So these are just all examples of every community has its own particular needs, and people will choose COVID-19 response funds accordingly to get that local on the ground knowledge and be able to make the kind of impact they're looking to make, and hopefully get the feedback on what kind of impact they did make. So I think that sometimes dollars feel like they go into a black hole for people. They give money, but they never hear back on whether or not it made a difference. Hopefully a lot of these, and we are at our community foundation trying to deploy those dollars quickly when they go into the COVID-19 response funds, and then be able to say, and this is how we spent the money. So it gives the donors confidence, and they know that they'd like to do that again.
So let's go over to what's currently trending. I mean, Ashley, you're working with a lot of very uber high net worth people, and probably COVID has triggered a lot of, conversations on different things. What are you seeing, hearing? What's happening with your clients?
A lot of our clients are focused on, their financials and their estate plan, making sure everything is in order with a little bit more free time and, definitely some concern about what's going on. They're very focused. So we are trying to, as we start preparing Q2 reports for our clients, and we'll be reviewing with them, we're having the conversations on, if there's different planning opportunities, and discussing with them what they can do for charitable purposes.
Yep. And in the estate planning arena, I mean, one of the most simple items anybody can do, anybody that's preparing a will is provide a bequest. It's the simplest thing you could do, is simply add a paragraph about, I hereby declare, I am John Gassman, I'm competent, and I'd like to leave $1 million to the New Hampshire Community Foundation. But that's probably something that a lot of people can do very simply in terms of their planning. Richard, what are you seeing here?
Yeah, I'm seeing some of the most thoughtful conversations I've ever had with people. We have a conversation, as it says there in the top, more free time. They're concerned about their mortality. It makes it very immediate. This is an easy thing to kick down the road, is estate planning. But in fact, people say it's important for me to do that now. So I talk very open-endedly with people. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? For example, this one woman said, I want to help orphans, I want to help children with cancer, and I want to help support animal rescue. So we just talked about the different vehicles in which she could accomplish that goal through a memorandum of understanding at her passing. And it's been a terrific experience for her. And that's just one example of many of people appreciating the time to sit down and talk through such things.
Yeah, there's clearly, with the markets performing what they are, I don't know what the markets are doing today, but for a lot of the retirees that I work with, there's concern, there's trepidation about the long-term viability of investing in the stock market. People don't want to run out of money. So we, as advisors, should be able to come up with solutions to help provide them with guaranteed, predictable income, cash flow for the rest of their lives. And in the charitable arena, we have such tools that are available to people to ensure that they don't run out of money. So can either of you address those types of tools that are out there that we should be talking to the clients about?
I'll start. I'll just say the charitable gift annuity is very popular nationwide, especially amongst people who are 72 and older, looking for, as JG said, some stable quarterly fixed income. They know exactly how it's going to be taxed. And when those dollars, when that gift annuity terminates, either because they choose to terminate it during their lifetime or they terminate it because they passed away, then those remainder dollars go to their favorite nonprofits. So then on another level, there's other types of options, such as a charitable remainder trust that's also has like an annuity feature to it. That's another way that people can provide themselves with stable income. So there's just two examples.
Yeah, and I would assume, Ashley, since you're the one creating the balance sheets for your clients, you get to see the big picture. The accountant doesn't always see it, but you see the whole picture for the client, and you can direct them on all the different types of vehicles and strategies that they can deploy in order to do what they really want to do.
Right. Absolutely. So we're always, as we're preparing the balance sheet, thinking of different strategies and, things that the clients might not necessarily be thinking about, whether it's a home that they've had on the market for months and they're just trying to get rid of it, and having the conversation that could go into a DAF if they really wanted to, or, looking at the appreciated securities, restricted shares in a company, or, even just tangible personal property that, art or jewelry or something like that could be donated instead of cash.
Yeah, and non-cash assets are, a lot of people, they want to hold their cash. They don't want to give away their cash. Liquidity, it's most valuable. And there are things they could do with their non-cash assets. So why is starting the conversation about giving now beneficial more than ever? And again, to your point, Ashley, what are some of the other assets that people can donate or consider donating?
I mean, go ahead, Ashley.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say cash is king. Lots of people think of cash first, but it tends to be lower dollar. And a lot of nonprofits, that's all they take is cash. But the reality is, if you looked at somebody's total net worth, a lot of their money is in a lot of these other assets, but those are not usually solicited for charitable giving. So just to highlight these, a business, obviously people can donate shares of their business. They can make gifts from their business. There's all different ways to do that. Real estate, as Ashley mentioned, residential real estate, commercial real estate, raw land, lots of opportunities there because people don't want to sell those assets because of the capital gains. So they're looking for exit options. IRAs and life insurance policies. We talked about the qualified charitable distributions from an existing IRA, but in both these situations, you can take the cash inside of those, the IRAs and the life insurance policies, and donate those now, or you can leave the nonprofits as remainder beneficiaries. And just a quick point on that, IRAs should probably go to the nonprofit because then there'll be no taxation. And then the life insurance policies, which death benefit is tax-free anyway, maybe those should go either to the nonprofit or to children or to family. Private foundation and other types of assets like those are private foundation dollars of $5 million or less maybe don't make sense to stay in the form of a private foundation unless there's a reason that they're trying to structure it that way. Many times donor advised funds can be utilized instead of a private foundation. And then the last piece there, securities, publicly traded, highly appreciated securities, or privately held or closely held stock. A lot of these things just take a little time, with maybe the exception of publicly traded securities. A lot of these things take time to the on-ramp for making these gifts can be anywhere from weeks to months. So having the conversation now just gets people's wheels turning as a way to alternatively fund their favorite nonprofits outside of cash.
Yeah. I would add to that, we recently had a client who had accumulated significant wealth in their IRA rollover account. And that was because they worked for a lot of companies. They rolled and consolidated everything into an IRA. And it's worth millions of dollars. And the client is sitting here today saying, I'm a little concerned that at some point in time, not only are they going to change the estate tax rules, which is clearly a driver for conversation with clients about philanthropy, but my kids may be left with like 20 cents on the dollar from this IRA between the income tax and the estate tax. Maybe it wasn't such a good asset to invest in, right? It was a great accumulation vehicle, but from a distribution perspective, it's full of the tax. So he figured out through some planning techniques, I'll just leave this to my alma mater. I'll change the beneficiary, real simple. I'll leave it there, and I'll do some wealth replacement strategies. And that's what we came up with. That was because we had the balance sheet for the client, and we can easily see what was going on. And Ashley, as you look at, and you're working with the clients, there are some hot assets in here that are definitely worth not holding on to, but gifting away.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you say that because 2 of my clients just recently changed the beneficiary of their IRAs to a charity.
Yeah, and it's great because it's a bequest right in the will and or via the beneficiary designation. You don't have to worry about anything. But the big concern is you, me, Richard, we're all having these conversations with clients. It's almost natural for us to have the conversation with the clients, though I think a lot of advisors don't have the conversation. And Richard, as you look at this slide and you see what's out there and you work with advisors to clients, how often do advisors really bring this up, or is it more of the clients that want the conversation?
So this is a bit of a comical slide. It was taken from the U.S. Trust Report from 2018, and it's a slide about perception. So the first part there, high net worth individual initiates the conversation. If you ask the high net worth individuals, they say, well, I do. I bring it up. My advisor doesn't. And then if you ask the advisor, or from their perspective, the advisor says on the other side, I bring it up. I'm the one who brings it up, and my client doesn't. So the idea there is, what does bringing it up look like? Maybe the advisor might bring it up in a superficial way, or maybe they'll just say, do you want to leave a nonprofit as a beneficiary of one of your policies? And maybe that's the conversation as the advisor sees it. Maybe the high net worth individual is expecting that it's going to be a more substantive, deeper conversation. And that's why maybe they're dissatisfied. So it's all about perception of what does the philanthropic conversation look like. And I always find this to be a fascinating topic.
Yeah. In your court, Ashley, as you coordinate and integrate with the planning for your clients with other advisors, how well educated are the other advisors about all the various tools and how philanthropy can fit in for a family?
We're regularly working with estate attorneys and tax advisors when our client is making a substantial gift or a complex gift, to make sure that we have, all the right information. We are considering all the various issues that could present itself. So we definitely work with a number of advisors, and we're having these conversations on a regular basis. I think it depends on the client as well. Some clients like to handle it themselves, and just have JDJ do the administrative side of it. And some clients really get us involved in the planning, which we appreciate because we like to see the full picture and be involved in the entire process.
So with that, let's come to the real point of this is, how do we start? How do we as advisors, the people that are on the Zoom call, how do we initiate? How do we broach the topic with a client or with a prospect for that matter?
I think for me, we meet with our clients on a regular basis, either quarterly or monthly, to review their financials. So that's really our prime opportunity to bring up the topic. But that being said, if there's a major event, liquidity or change in a will, or birth or marriage or whatever it may be, we just try to time it right and have a conversation at that point. We like to start by asking about their values and what's important to them. Thank you for that, JG. And just learning a little bit more about them. We find it helps deepen our relationship with the clients, learn more about the legacy they want to leave, how they want to involve their family, and so on.
Yeah. Richard, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, this slide is an excellent example that I think a lot of advisors just say, I just don't know how to say it. I don't know where to bring it up. I don't really feel like it's appropriate. Maybe they come with their own biases. That's the other thing. Sometimes advisors come with saying, I wouldn't appreciate it if somebody brought it up to me. I would only want to bring it up myself. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why people sort of talk themselves out of bringing it up. But all these bullet points, demonstrate that there's times where you can walk into that conversation. And so it can be a trigger point or an entry point like this, or what's not on the slide is just simply making it part of a holistic conversation. Somewhere, maybe first meeting that someone has with their client, they talk about what's important to them, very open-ended types of things. Like, what do you do? Do you volunteer? Are you on a board? Tell me about your life. Tell me about what you want to do after you retire. You get a lot of tips and tricks and clues about what's important to somebody that may make the conversation easier. And if you don't have that, then there are these very tactical entry points as well.
We typically, in our organization, when we initially meet with a new client or prospect, they're not a donor, but a prospect, usually at some point during the conversation, we ask them about their philanthropic activities. How involved are they? Are they involved in any community? Do they have an affinity towards any one specific organization? And then I usually pop the question, and my team always gets a chuckle out of this. The question that I usually ask is, so Richard and Ashley, let me ask a question. If grandma died and left you $10 million, of which the deal is you have to give 40% away to keep the 60, who would you kind of leave it to? It has to be a philanthropic organization. It has to be a charitable organization. Kind of what comes to mind. And you'll find people will say, oh, that's easy. I'll give it to my alma mater. Or, oh, someone in our family passed away from cancer or heart disease. I'd like to donate something. And you just got to write that down and leave it for later, because sooner or later, if it's a significant estate, they're going to give their money to the IRS. And the question is, why give it to the IRS when you, Mr. Client, you can control where your money goes? We're all philanthropists. Either we're voluntary or involuntary. Voluntary, you choose it. Involuntary, you pay taxes and let the government choose where your money goes. So these entry points are such great places to simply gather the information. You don't have to have the answer. There is no answer. The client's going to tell you the answer. So I look at this and I say there are a lot of great places, and the two of you are amazing with the work that you do, the impact that you have to really help clients succeed. So with that, if there's something, let me ask each of you this. What's the one golden nugget that you can share with all the participants? If there's something you could say, hey, walk away with this, or I want to leave you with this idea to noodle on, what is it? Either one of you can jump on it first.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Ashley.
Okay.
No, go ahead. Yeah,
I think our clients want us to have this conversation with them, not to be afraid of it. A conversation with the client about their values, it's an opportunity to learn more about the client and invite further, more meaningful interactions going forward. So, even if they haven't given the topic much thought, you're at least opening the door to further conversation and just letting them know you're there to listen and provide advice and help implement when they're ready.
And I would say, think about it this way. How often do people really have the chance to step back and think about what's really important to them, what kind of legacy or impact they want to make in the world? It's usually, there's no room for that. There's no time for that. And people really appreciate it when you do have that conversation, or you invite somebody in who can help them have that conversation. It's very gratifying to them and very fulfilling. And I don't think we can underestimate that. And that's why I do what I do. I think it's very fulfilling myself.
Yeah, it's like Maslow's hierarchy. You get to that top level of self-actualization, which is all about helping other people. That's how you self-actualize. So I look at this and I say we have a lot of great, for everyone that's on the Zoom call, for those that are participating, we have some really amazing people. Ashley has deep knowledge and expertise in providing advice, counsel, and perspective. And Richard, through his background and experience in planned giving and major gifts, and now at the Community Foundation, we have a lot of lot of firepower here and can really be impactful to helping clients fulfill not only their financial dreams, but also their aspirational visions of transferring values down and making a positive impact. And COVID has definitely left people in a situation to think about what is their ultimate legacy. So with that, let's open this up to conversation and discussion with those. I know there was a couple of questions. No questions, just simply some points in the chat box. So any questions, comments, thoughts, you can unmute yourself when Jen gives the thumbs up to everybody. We got a couple of minutes left before we all run away.
Hi, I actually, right before this, I just got off a webinar from Russell James, who's the charitable giving researcher guru at Texas Tech or something. Anyway, his webinar was specifically about how the various changes, CARES Act, federal rates and such made charitable giving make a lot of sense right now. But he blew my mind with something, and I wanted to ask you about it. He said that when you're marketing and outreach, your messaging around gift annuities and lead trusts and such, our studies of high net worth individuals tell us that tax favorability is not a motivator. And his research shows that it is in fact incredibly important to lead with the tax benefits. So I wonder what you all think about that. And his, what did he call it? Social responsiveness bias or something like that. You know, the pressure to give the correct answer from a social perspective led to, oh no, taxes aren't important. So it's flipped me on my head this afternoon, and I was wondering what you guys think about it, both from the advisor perspective as well as from the nonprofit.
Can I take a stab at that first? So
Ashley or me? Yeah.
Whoever wants to go first.
I'll take it. I mean, I'll just say Sharon, I'm thinking of a survey that we did to our constituency, and it was taxes were the fourth most important reason why they donated. It wasn't at the top. But at the same time, practitioners, we all know that saving money is important to people. Sometimes it is the number one entry point. It's the thing that's the trigger. You know, I'm going to have some capital gains taxes and I need to do something about this. And oh, philanthropic giving is the solution? Okay. And then you go from there. And then sometimes it's more like, I want to do this. I want to make this kind of impact. And they say, okay, let's look at the most tax efficient way for you to do that. So I think there's different studies done in different people. It's an interesting point about the socially appropriate response to that versus the cold-hearted, yes, I just want to save money response. So I don't know. I think every individual is different that you talk to. It's important to know the tax law and know the tax law changes and all those things, but it may or may not be the number one reason why they approach us. I don't know if Ashley has different thoughts on that.
I think, yeah, I agree completely. You know, my clients have very different personalities. So I can see some of them not caring about taxes at all. To them, it's all about the impact. And, you know, taxes are just an afterthought. And then some are very specific. It comes up only if there's transactions where it would make sense. So I think it really varies from my perspective.
Yeah, Sharon, I've been I was on the tax side for many years, 20 some odd years practicing tax compliance work. And I would tend to agree with Ashley and Richard. As a transaction appeared on the table, clients selling a business, getting out of a highly concentrated stock. And we would always ask that same question of, well, if I could show you a way to minimize or avoid the tax, is that something you'd be interested in? And it wasn't done in a slick, salesy way. It was really in an effort to educate the clients or the donor. And most of the time the client said, yeah, if you could show me a way to avoid a tax or eliminate it or totally get rid of it, I'm up for it. What do you got? Is it legal? You know, that's usually the second question. Is it legal? Is the IRS going to throw me in jail? And the answer is, I've had clients that have sold businesses that gave away nickels and pickles. I mean, they were not philanthropic. They were not charitably inclined. But when they saw the power of a charitable remainder trust, an annuity trust over a period of 20, 30 years, that this thing would generate more cash flow to them, less tax to Izzy, Robert, and Sam, and they could do all these other things. It was like taking a stone. You ever take a stone, you buy a lake, you take a stone, and you try to skim it across, and it has all these ripple effects. You see like 8 or 9 ripples. That's the value. That's the power in the charitable planning area, that we have these amazing tools that create all these ripples. Tax deductions, cash flow, legacy, blah, blah, on and on and on. So a lot of clients are not motivated by taxes, but once they hear, oh, there's a way, oh, I'm up for it. What do you got? Show me, teach me, educate me. They want to be informed. They want to make educated, in my experience, they want to make educated decisions. And it's like Monty Hall. There's door number 1, door number 2, and door number 3. Pay the tax, call it a day. Don't pay the tax, and that's what people want. At least that's what I think. Educate, 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 educate. And the power of that education will dictate ultimately whether they jump on it or not.
And I think asking a lot of open-ended questions that would help people understand that you're not leading them towards something, you're asking them, and then you're providing opportunities, advice, choices, as JG says.
I think George has his hand up. You have to unmute, George.
Well, I was just going to throw out, one of the strategies I use when I talk to people is invite them to sort of self-locate on a spectrum. And I use these silly examples. I say, I work with a lot of people, and I got my guy who, doesn't want to pay a penny of tax ever. And it's a trade-off with control. And we have some structures, and he's got to sort of beg his kids for money to get groceries, but he knows his kids will get 100 cents on the dollar. They'll never pay a penny of tax. And I got my other guy, and he's like, I need to be able to take this money to Vegas and put it on a black 22 until the day I die. And it's all mine. My kids might get 19 cents on the dollar, but nobody's going to starve. But I can't give up control. So, Mike, where do you see yourself on that spectrum? Have you thought about that? And then, invite them to kind of self-place, and then the conversation goes. And sometimes people just look at you glassy-eyed, but it can be a way to draw out if they have a position on that spectrum, which is a good point of entry sometimes.
Yeah, and I'd also add to George's point, sorry to interrupt you, Rich. I saw your lips began to move, that, Sharon, I met with a client the other day, 2 executives. They're worth uber millions of dollars, 2 kids from prior marriage. And in the planning, they said, listen, we're going to leave our kids like $2 million each. Everything else we want to go to charity. We don't want to enrich them. We want to direct our social capital. They use my word sometimes. And I was like, makes a lot of sense. And it'll go to a religious institution and an educational institution. And it only came about because we asked the questions about if grandma left you $10 million, what would you do? Like, how much do my kids really need? They don't need $50 million. $2 million each is more than sufficient. They got enough money. We'd like to make an impact in the world.
It's like the Warren Buffett quote, right? I want to give my kids enough to do something, but not so much that they do nothing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I'll say too, I think it's an iterative process, George. And to your point, people will say, here's where I see myself on that spectrum. And then 2 years from now, 5 years from now, that has evolved even further, just simply because you're having that open-ended conversation, which is, here are the choices you have, here's what you can do. And I think just people appreciate the fact that they know that somebody's there on the other side, either one or more practitioners that can help them flesh out their game plan, instead of feeling like there's only one choice or no one's talking to them about anything at all. They feel like, hey, I actually work with the right people because everyone's seeing me make the best decisions for myself or my family. And I'm not sure that we do that as well as we could do it comprehensively as a network.
Any other question, thoughts, or comments before we close the show?
I have a quick comment. I frequently work with primarily donor advisors and people who are early retirement and trying to figure out what they want to do. And one of my favorite questions with them is, what do you want to see more of in the community? What would you like to see less of? and frequently it comes out like questions that stumped them. That seems to work for many people. So I offer it.
Thank
Yeah, and
you.
you could take that, Sharon, and sometimes we will say, and if you could find a way to make impact locally and do the things that you say you'd like to do to make progress in the world or positive impact in the world, would you like to know about that? And most of the time people say, yes, of course I want to know about that. And so then you give them some hope and you give them a place to place their philanthropic dollars that have some leverage and impact.
Well,
Makes them feel good.
I'm gonna end on saying it was really terrific presenting with Ashley and Richard. Thank you, George. Thank you, Stu. Thank you, everybody. And there's a lot of great stuff that came out of this, and I could see us writing a couple of articles and being very impactful. And I shared before a common interest group within the USA 500 Club, because the media is not focused enough on the value that philanthropic planning plays and can play. And I think it's going to become more important as time goes by. So thank you all, and let's do this again.
Yes. Thanks, everybody.
Everyone for joining.
Thanks, JG. So